"You're not my real father, get out of my life." Those words cut through the marble halls like a guillotine blade, sending Edward's heart plummeting. The man who sold his car worked 3 jobs and slept on a couch so Louisa could chase her dreams, was now nothing more than a disgrace in his own home. But as he stepped into the night, one secret shimmered beneath his calm, a hidden fortune worth millions waiting to rewrite every rule in her perfect world. Think someone can abandon you and get away with it? Hit subscribe now and brace yourself. Louisa's about to witness a reckoning she'll never forget. Like, comment, and stay tuned. This is the story of how one man's hidden fortune turns injustice into the ultimate payback. 23 years ago, Edward was just a young chauffeur with no family of his own until tragedy struck. 5-year-old Louisa lost her parents in a sudden crash, and no one with money or influence would step forward. That's when Edward, barely scraping by on his driver's wages, took her in without hesitation. He sold his only car to pay for her school books, worked 3 jobs so she could eat at table instead of leftovers, and gave up every comfort sleeping on a threadbare sofa so she'd have the bedroom with a window. As Louisa grew into a brilliant law student, Edward was there every late night, quizzing her on case law until his eyes closed in exhaustion. He watched her walk the stage at graduation with tears in his proud eyes. All the while, he kept one secret, a small inheritance from his late brother invested in a tech startup that would one day multiply into a hidden fortune. Then Victor appeared, silver-tongued heir to a construction empire. He admired Louisa's mind and beauty, but he scoffed at Edward's weathered face and quiet manners. He whispered that Louisa's future depended on appearances, that a grown man who slept on a couch was a liability. Louisa, hungry for acceptance, began to echo his words no more. Dad in public, no family dinners, no photos of her childhood. Behind rose-tinted glasses, Victor and Louisa plotted Edward's exit. A designer suit, an expensive watch, and whispered jabs convinced her that the man who raised her was yesterday's news. Without warning, Louisa stood in her sprawling hall and spat, "You're not my real father, pack your things." The same man who built her dreams was discarded like broken furniture. Tonight, as Victor admires himself in the foyer mirror and Louisa celebrates her next promotion, they have no clue that Edward's hidden investments have grown into a multi-million-dollar empire. They don't know that while they reveled in shaming him, Edward was quietly preparing a reckoning that will shatter their perfect world. Soon, every stone of their privileged facade will tremble under the weight of the man they tried to erase. Every invitation list he once appeared on now trembles at the sight of Edward's empty chair. Louisa hosts lavish gatherings in that grand hall, cello strings. In the corner, crystal flutes brimming, yet her heart snaps shut when she remembers who's been erased. Victor, in his tailored tuxedo, leans in close, whispering, "Can you imagine him here, ruining our image?" His voice drips with contempt as he traces the silk of her gown. Word spreads through gilded corridors. Edward helps around the house, they say, like a paid companion. At boardroom galas, guests exchange sidelong glances and hushed laughter whenever Louisa introduces herself, without the "and my father." Each father she omits is a dagger into his dignity. She carefully deletes every childhood photo from birthday cakes to kindergarten recitals, so no evidence remains of his devotion. At the country club luncheon, Louisa's colleagues compliment Victor's insight how a wealthy daughter needs the right pedigree. "Your adopted dad," one murmurs, "must feel so out of place among real families." Victor smirks, tapping his $60,000 watch. "Don't worry," he says he'll understand eventually. The final straw comes when Louisa arrives home to find the front foyer repainted overnight. Edward's carefully polished shoes leave no mark on the new marble. His presence has been scrubbed away literally. She stands at the top of the staircase, eyes blazing, "Pack your things. You don't belong here anymore." Her words ricochet off the walls, once witnesses to his lullabies, and land in his chest like shots. Edward doesn't argue. He simply retrieves a small case from the foyer closet containing the essentials of 23 years of sacrifice. But behind his calm smile, a different fire ignites. Every rebuff, every whisper behind his back, every deleted photo becomes fuel. While Louisa basks in Victor's approving gaze, Edward's nights are spent at a dim cafe on the outskirts, where he first scraped together spare change for her school books. He meets Thomas, his old security business friend, and lays out the plan. They think I'm powerless. Let's remind them who really holds the cards. Back in the mansion, Victor basks in rumors of Louisa's Ascent partner track magazine features, praising her pedigree. He arranges for Edward to be cut from the next legal brief, the next charity dinner, the next family portrait. He's just a shadow, Victor boasts to a circle of wealthy peers. Yet none of them know the true weight of that shadow, a hidden fortune swelling in offshore accounts invested in tech startups before they exploded into unicorns. Louisa scrolls through social media smug at the before pictures. She's engineered no sign of a father figure, only Victor's arm draped possessively over her shoulders. She clicks share on a photo of her gleaming office tower. No distractions, she thinks only power. But as she hits post, a new notification pings. Thomas has sent Edward's first communique, a sleek black invitation embossed with gold. The final escalation looms the invitation to a gala thrown by an anonymous benefactor promising life-changing scholarships and community centers. Louisa's name is stamped in bold alongside Victor's. Edward's name, nowhere. It's the ultimate test. He has vanished from her world, but he's about to re-enter it under a new guise, armed with every resource she ridiculed him for. And as the clock ticks toward that fateful night, the tension coils tighter than the strings of a Stradivarius, every snub, every scandalous whisper, every deleted memory drawing them closer to a reckoning neither one can escape. The power dynamics have shifted. The man they discarded is about to engineer their downfall and rewrite the rules of their privileged game. Fate often hides its turning point in the quietest moments. For Edward, it came not with thunder, but with a whispered command he never saw coming. Clear out every last memory from the garage. Victor needs a private gym. He listened to Louisa's cold voice over the line, each syllable carving away the home he'd built, brick by brick, over 23 years. As the call clicked off, Edward sat in stunned silence, the hum of traffic outside the cafe window doing nothing to soothe the ache in his chest. He pushed back from the table, heart pounding, and wandered into the dim back room where he and Thomas had first sketched out their futures on a torn napkin. That napkin, now faded and stained with spilled coffee, bore the scrawl of Edward's first secret, an inheritance invested in a fledgling tech startup his brother had believed in. He'd kept it hidden, valuing Louisa's love above every dollar. But as he stared at the threadbare sofa where he once let her sleep, a new resolve crystallized. Edward retrieved his phone and scrolled past Victor's smug selfies and Louisa's curated snapshots, proof that they believed they could vanish him for good. His thumb hovered, then tapped. Transfer the entire sum of that secret account, $5.5 million, moved into a new fund bearing a name Louisa had never heard. Bridge to Tomorrow Initiative. The app's confirmation pinged like a starting gun in his mind. Moments later, Thomas burst in, eyes wide. They finally did it, Edward said, voice low but steady. They stripped me of every title, every memento. But they never took my worth. He handed Thomas a crisp black envelope sealed with gold, an invitation to Vanguard Associates' most exclusive client event, dropped anonymously on every socialite's doorstep. They think I'm powerless. Let's remind them who really holds the cards. That night, Edward stood on the edge of the city skyline, wind tugging at his coat, and stared at the glittering lights of Beverly Hills. 30 seconds ago, he was the broken man who lost his home. Now he was the architect of a reckoning that would shatter their perfect world. He folded the envelope in his pocket and whispered to the night. They asked me to disappear. Consider it done. In the days that followed, every whispered rumor, every raised eyebrow in the clubs, and every flashing headline fueled his ascent. As Louisa reveled in the illusion of her triumph, Edward orchestrated a gala that would unmask him at precisely the moment she least expected. The man they banished was about to return, rich, powerful, and utterly unstoppable. Edward's next move began in the hushed back office of Vanguard Associates, where polished marble met hushed whispers. Long before the high society gala, he had to lay the groundwork. Thomas, ever loyal, dialed the private line of Vanguard's VIP desk. His voice calm as he spoke. "I have a client, discreet net worth 5 to 6 million, seeking strategic investment opportunities." The receptionist paused at the figure, then transferred him immediately, the tone shifting from indifferent to deferential in a heartbeat. Moments later, Edward sat across from Jonathan Harrison, the firm's most exclusive consultant, in an office that gleamed like a trophy room. Harrison removed his cufflinks with the precision of a surgeon. "Mr. Williams, it's an honor," he began, though he had no idea who Edward really was. Edward offered a small, polite smile. "Thank you. I'm here to diversify," he said, sliding a dossier across the mahogany table. Inside, bank statements, brokerage receipts, and the full history of that secret tech investment that had grown over 15 years into a multi-million-dollar fortune. Harrison's eyes widened. "Your capital allocations have been visionary. Now, what are your objectives?" Edward leaned forward. "I want to invest $2 million in community-centered projects, scholarships, mentoring programs, youth centers, and I want the event to launch it at the finest venue in Beverly Hills." He let the words hang, each syllable carrying the weight of personal vindication. Harrison blinked, recalibrating. "Certainly. We can arrange a gala at the country club, 500 guests, full media coverage. I'll draft the proposal by tomorrow." Meanwhile, Louisa paced her living room in couture heels, her phone pressed to her ear, as Victor's lawyer outlined the paperwork. "Once you sign the waiver, Edward relinquishes any claim to the property," the voice explained briskly. Louisa's lips curved in triumph. "Good. I'll be there tomorrow at 2. She hung up and swept a hand over the pristine coffee table, erasing any trace of the hand-carved wooden box Edward had given her as a child. Back at Vanguard, Edward approved the press release. Anonymous benefactor pledges $2 million in educational grants. He omitted his own name, preferring the cloak of mystery. Every detail was deliberate. The embossed invitations, the gold foil seating cards, the velvet ropes that would funnel guests straight into the heart of his unfolding revenge. Thomas arranged for discreet photographer placements, ensuring every flash would capture the shock on Louisa's face when she realized who was really behind the generosity. That evening, Edward returned to the same cafe where he'd met Thomas after her adoption, the menu now written in elegant script rather than chalk on a board. He sipped his coffee slowly, watching the sun set over the city skyline. In his briefcase lay the signed waiver, ready to hand over to Victor's lawyer, and the final guest list, Louisa's name stamped in bold beside Victor's, both unwitting stars of his grand reveal. As he stepped out into the cooling night air, Edward's coat flared behind him like a banner. The plan was in motion. Louisa would see him walk away forever, only to return in a guise she'd never suspect. The first move was complete. In a week's time, the stage would be set, the society pages primed, and the reckoning would begin. And Edward, the man they cast aside, would stand at the very center of a world he had secretly built, ready to claim the victory they'd laughed at him for daring to imagine. The invitations arrived in matte black envelopes, each sealed with a single gold wax emblem. No name, no hint of the host. Socialites across Los Angeles found them slipped beneath their doors. "You are cordially invited to the Bridge to Tomorrow Gala. Join us in shaping the future of underprivileged youth." Inside the Vanguard Associates boardroom, Jonathan Harrison tapped his pen against the glossy dossier. He'd never seen a proposal so meticulously detailed. Seating charts accounted for every A-list couple. Press placements guaranteed maximum viral impact, and biometric guest entry would capture every gasp of surprise. "We'll need 200 extra security staff," Harrison murmured, eyes gleaming. This must be flawless. Meanwhile, Thomas stood in the cavernous ballroom of the country club, directing crews as they hoisted towering floral sculptures and draped satin backdrops. Caterers rehearsed their synchronized service drill, caviar-topped canapes, champagne towers, and a signature cocktail called Redemption that glowed beneath blacklight. In every hallway, lanterns flickered like watchful sentinels and hidden speakers cued a string quartet poised to swell at the perfect moment. Back at Edward's modest loft downtown, he reviewed the final guest list on a sleek tablet. Louisa Whitmore boldface name in law journals would arrive alongside Victor Montenegro, his tailored tuxedo gleaming. Neither suspected that the man they'd shamed would orchestrate their public unmasking. He scrolled to the press release, his finger pausing on a single line, "Anonymous benefactor will make a special appearance." Perfect ambiguity. Hours before the gala, Edward toured the venue under cover of darkness. He watched as stagehands set up the central podium, its gold-trimmed microphone awaiting his first words. He imagined the hush falling over the crowd when he stepped into the light. The echo of his footsteps on polished marble gave him chills both of anticipation and vindication. Outside, sleek black sedans lined the curb. Paparazzi hotspots were marked with neon tape. Thomas handed Edward a slim black tuxedo, no designer label, no flashy cufflinks, just a perfect fit. "They won't know you," Thomas whispered, "until the moment you choose to be seen." In the media center, reporters practiced their angles on Louisa's smiling headshot, unaware that their star guest was also the evening's greatest surprise. Invitations to live stream the keynote were already flooding inboxes, tagged exclusive, primed to break first on every social feed. As the final sunlight slipped below the horizon, chandeliers blazed to life. A fleet of drones hovered above, ready to capture aerial shots of the arriving elite. Silent alarms were tested in back corridors. Every guest badge embossed with the gala's Phoenix logo hid an RFID chip to track movement and spotlight Edward's entrance from the side wing. In the grand foyer, servers glided among clusters of guests offering hors d'oeuvres and whispered rumors no one knows who's behind the donation. The tension was palpable, like a taut string ready to snap. Louisa, draped in diamonds, sipped her champagne, unaware that the man they discarded had built this entire spectacle. At precisely 8:00 p.m., the lights dimmed. A solitary spotlight illuminated the podium as the string quartet cut off mid-note. A hush fell over the crowd. Behind the curtain, Edward straightened his lapels, drew a steady breath, and stepped forward. The moment he spoke would reverberate through every echo in that hall and through every shattered illusion in Louisa's perfect world. The grand hall fell into utter silence as Jonathan Harrison's voice faded. Every eye snapped toward the podium, where a single spotlight waited like a trap. Then the curtain drew back, and there he stood, Edward in an unadorned black tuxedo face, calm but eyes blazing. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The man they had erased was now the architect of their most exclusive event. "Good evening," he began, voice carrying over the hush. "Thank you for joining me tonight, not as a chauffeur's adopted daughter, but as beneficiaries of your own prejudices." The crystal chandeliers trembled as he paused. Louisa's jaw dropped. Victor's smug grin froze. Flashbulbs erupted, capturing the moment her world tilted off its axis. Edward lifted a slender folder. 23 years ago, I sold my car so Louisa could chase her dreams. I slept on a couch so she could sleep in a proper bed. And I invested every spare penny unchecked, unseen into a single tech startup. He let the words land like stones. The music stuttered in the background. Servers froze mid-step. "Tonight I'm donating $5.5 million in scholarships and community centers. All the generosity you applaud, but none of the humiliation you inflicted." Murmurs escalated into shouts. Whispers of, "Who is this man? And is that Louisa's father?" spread like wildfire. Cameras swung toward her, capturing the color draining from her face. Victor sprang forward, voice cracked. "Edward, this is absurd." But Edward held up a hand. "Absurdity is believing that your title makes you worthy, and mine makes me worthless." His words sliced through every gilded lie. As Edward closed the folder and strode off stage, the string quartet resumed with tremulous notes. The gala transformed into a riot of stunned applause and outraged murmurs. Reporters clamored, socialites scrambled to whisper, and Louisa, once the golden child, stood paralyzed, stripped of her defenses. In that deafening moment, the power had irrevocably shifted. By the time the final toast rang out, headlines had already formed in half the world's newsrooms. Adopted chauffeur exposes elite in 5.5 miniatures shock donation. Edward vanished into the night as quietly as he had reappeared, leaving behind shattered illusions and a question echoing through every marble corridor. When you judge a person by their appearance, how loud will the truth have to speak before you finally listen? 3 months later, the world had rewritten itself around Edward's bold stand. The Bridge to Tomorrow initiative had grown from a whispered rumor into a $15 million foundation funding scholarships and youth centers across Los Angeles. Universities courted his vision, business leaders clamored for speaking slots, and media outlets hailed him as a hero of social justice. Meanwhile, Louisa's life lay in ruins. Henderson and Associates quietly let her go. The firm feared that scandal would stain their reputation. Her luxury apartment was sold to cover legal fees, and Victor's family disowned him for igniting the public spectacle. Their curated world of prestige crumbled overnight, leaving them both adrift in headlines that branded them as symbols of cruelty and entitlement. One gray morning, Louisa sat alone in a humble cafe, clutching the last of her savings when her phone rang. She recognized Edward's number before he spoke. "I know you're struggling," he said softly. "I want to give you a chance to rebuild here with me." He offered her a position at the foundation, organizing applications, meeting scholars, learning what true worth meant. No title, no special favors, just honest work. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I'll do it." He sighed with relief. "Then prove it," he replied. "Show me you value people for their hearts, not their bank accounts." 6 months later, Louisa stood in the foundation's modest office, helping a young student fill out an engineering scholarship form. The boy's grateful smile reminded her of Edward's tireless devotion during her own school days. In that moment, she understood the lesson he'd baked into every sacrifice. Real power lies in lifting others up. That evening, Edward watched from his new downtown office as Louisa locked up. She caught his eye, and with a shy smile called out, "Dad." It was the first time she used the word in years, and it felt like the sweetest sound he'd ever heard. Today, Edward speaks to packed auditoriums from Harvard to community centers, sharing a single truth. The best revenge is not to destroy those who hurt you, but to build something so meaningful they can't ignore your worth. In the front row, Louisa beams with pride, proof that redemption and love can rise from the ashes of betrayal. Redemption isn't born from revenge, it's forged in the fires of purpose. Edward's journey proves that when someone discards you for who they think you are, you can answer not with bitterness, but with a legacy that outlasts their cruelty. He transformed every insult into fuel, every closed door into an opportunity to lift others higher than he ever stood himself. Louisa's fall was public and brutal, but her rise was quiet and profound. She traded a gilded office for a humble desk, not because she had to, but because she chose to learn the true measure of worth. In mentoring a struggling student, she found the value of empathy, something that no paycheck or title could ever buy. When she finally whispered "Dad," it wasn't just forgiveness. It was acknowledgement that love and respect must be earned, not assumed. We all carry hidden strengths, secret investments of character that no one can see until we decide to reveal them. Edward didn't shout his wealth or parade his victories. He invited the world to witness the impact of generosity. He reminded a society obsessed with status that the greatest power lies in giving, not getting. So ask yourself, when you're written off, will you crumble, or will you build something so meaningful that your doubters become your biggest fans? Will you let rejection define you, or will you rewrite the script and make your pain the cornerstone of your purpose? The real triumph isn't in making them suffer, it's in creating a force so positive, so transformative, that it uplifts everyone in its path. That is the best revenge, a life of service that outshines every slight, every whisper of doubt, and every narrow-minded judgment. If Edward's story moved, you share it with someone who needs a reminder that their worth isn't in a bank balance or a pedigree. Because sometimes the darkest betrayals lead to the brightest new beginnings,